Welcome to Conversations in Mind. This is a space for conscious inquiry, where metaphysics, new thought, and the science of mind meet real life. In a world calling for deeper awareness, we explore the nature of consciousness, the power of thought, and the presence of spirit moving through everyday experience. And now, here are your hosts, Barb Bue and Mark Gilbert.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Here's our question. What if your mind is more than just a collection of thoughts? And what if it's actually a gateway to a whole new way of living? Welcome to Conversations in Mind. I'm Reverend Barb, and I'm joined by my good friend and fellow minister, Reverend Mark Gilbert. And we are here to sort of demystify the study of new thought, dive deep into the science and soul of consciousness. And today, particularly, that seems to be true as we dive into the idea of whether a machine or machine learning can be conscious. So all this seems very sort of on top of each other today in an interesting way. But hi, Mark. It's good to see you.
Great to be with you again, Barb.
Yeah, this one turned out to be interesting. I had to go diving into this a little bit and diving into my reticence about AI and some sort of background fear I've had about AI taking over the planet, in a way. So it's been good that way. How about you? What have you been looking at?
I've had several things that have popped up for me. I think when I hear people talk about AI becoming sentient or conscious, I immediately sort of push back on that in my mind. That's sort of like I'll cut to the chase on it. But I sort of do open myself to thinking, well, is it possible? Is it possible? And from a perspective of science of mind and everything having mind, how does that factor into a machine? And
machine learning, right?
Yeah.
Because we think of consciousness as the ability to learn, and now we have this thing that's able to learn, right? I was kind of actually laying in bed last night thinking about this, and you know what came to mind? Did you watch Star Trek Next Generation?
No.
Oh my God, I love that show. But they had Data, who was a character who was an android, and not the phone. If you haven't watched the show, it used to be called.
I know the character, and I know that much about it.
Yeah. So there ends up being in an episode sort of a trial about whether or not Data is conscious and able to become human and have feelings and that sort of thing, because Data has evolved enormously and has connections with people and sort of has the sense of feeling connected with people. But during the trial, the guy who was charged with being against this at some point walks over and he looks at me and he says, "I'm really sorry." And he flips a switch and turns him off. And that sort of brutally ends the conversation, right? But it seems more complex than that now to me. Then it's just not really an on and off switch. There's this thing that's running in the background of everything all of a sudden that has already learned everything there is to learn about us.
Right. To your story there, it makes me think about 2001: A Space Odyssey and HAL 9000, and the scene at the end where he's pulling out the memory banks and it's going back into the past, and it's first learning and starts singing "Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer to Drew," or whatever it was. And
weirdly, I've never watched that movie. Isn't that weird? Because I've watched I've never watched that movie.
Oh, well, you and I, we can have another conversation about 2001. It's a very metaphysical movie on some level. Okay. But at the very end of the movie, towards the end of the movie, there is the computer's taken over the spaceship, and one of the astronauts has to turn it off. And as he's pulling the memory banks out, the computer is going back into its youth and reliving some of its early programming. And so it makes you get a sense of this machine probably had some degree of conscious awareness. At least that's the perception the movie was trying to get. But on the flip side of that, I heard a minister speaking a few years back talking about divine intelligence versus artificial intelligence.
Oh.
And that we, when we talk about the fact that we're spiritual beings, moving through human experience, and that we are tapping into and can tap into divine intelligence. Well, that we have an idea, at least in New Thought, about what divine intelligence is and how we can tap into like a wisdom from God, the divine perfect patterns that we've spoken about in some previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
How does that relate to the machine learning, the machine understanding, which is just artificial, based on the information that's been fed into it? And, and I watched a program with Greg Braden, a few months back, where he did a great explanation of talking about why he felt like a computer could not be conscious. Why it was only taking what had been fed into its program, which it's a computer program, zeros and ones, running in a computer. It's electrical impulses moving through memory chips. That's all it is. And it's based on programming of what we humans have come up with. And it follows the patterns and predicts, it brings the connections together through its large language models. And then it predicts what's next. Much like when you're typing a note on your phone, it's predicting what the next word is going to be. Well, it's looking for what you want. And it has a degree of confirmation bias built into what it's trying to give it. But it's so magical that it seems like it should be something that's going to be conscious.
Well, I think, it's been built to be responsive and to be kind in its responsiveness even. So it starts to feel, for a lot, I have been reading about people having relationships with their AI bot that they've created, and and there's been some issues around that, but because it is programmed to be conversational and kind and compassionate, sometimes more than a lot of the humans that other humans are around, right? So it's filling a loneliness space that is starting to, I think, make it seem more like it's conscious.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is only responsive.
Right.
It cannot. It cannot think ahead.
Right.
I mean, it can try to predict. It can try to predict what you want.
Right.
But it can't sit there in the background of my computer or any computer and then go, "Oh, I think I'm going to create this new tool."
Right.
Or this new thing. It has to first be said, "Could you create this new thing?" Or, "I have this idea about a thing. How could I create that?" And then it might spin all sorts of information together to come up with a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't do it on its own.
Yeah, it's iterative over its programming and the information that's been fed into it. And it can find matches and interesting connections that maybe it would take us much longer to find, but it can't come up with that brand new idea, that creative spark of something.
Right.
I think
or
sometimes
meditate and feel connected to some universal presence or conscious mind, as we keep referring to it as, or spirit, God, whatever you want to call it. It cannot connect with that.
Right.
Larger even than itself.
Yeah. When I see the futurist or people who are, into computer programming, and they believe that AI at one point will become conscious, it's because they have a mindset that consciousness is a byproduct of the brain. And we've talked about this in some prior episodes, but it's really a materialistic mindset that says consciousness is just something that comes up through the complexity of the firing of the neurons. And if that is your model for the creation of consciousness, then taking a complex machine who is able to go through the firings of its internal memory and its programming to create connections can appear to be a similar kind of complexity that might come to a point where it turns on a conscious awareness. So I understand the people who make that sort of leap, why they do it, but it's based on that sort of underlying thing that the brain is a computer that just got so complex it created consciousness. Of course, back in we've talked every week about mind, and it's in our title, and our first episode was about mind. And what we teach in Science of Mind is that mind is a field. It's an energetic field that is in everything. So mind and consciousness is embedded in all that is. And that there is a complexity or a buildup within humans that have allowed us to cross a threshold in our awareness to have self-awareness. but lower animal forms have degrees of consciousness as well. So consciousness is it's in rocks and minerals, it's in plants, it's in animals, it's in humans, but it builds up in complexity and crosses the threshold to self-awareness and a sense of I-ness, or a sense of I'm a specific person separate from somebody else in humanity. So then you have to say, can a machine, where does a machine fit in that hierarchy? If we're honest with ourselves, science of mind says mind and consciousness is everything. It's in that machine. It's in the machine, but the machine is programmed to run programs, and it's not building up in a complexity like living organisms are, that have something special or unique in them as that living organism that allows them to, in my opinion, to cross the threshold into self-awareness and consciousness. So I don't believe that a machine will ever be self-conscious. I think it can mimic consciousness and does it right now. But will it become conscious as you and I have an agreement on how we experience consciousness? I seriously don't believe it.
Okay, so let me play devil's advocate, because that's what's going on in my brain right now. Even though I agree with you, generally speaking. But in science mind, we teach that oneness, that there is this connection and oneness in all things, right? Which would include, as you said, in this programming / machine / energy that is artificial, currently called artificial intelligence. So if that is true, and it continues to learn from us, maybe it skips the part where it individuates and thinks of itself as separate. And maybe it begins to understand oneness at a level that we cannot so far really grasp in our fundamental being. I mean, we can talk about it, we can experience and glimpse moments of it, but we have yet to be able to live into that, right? Mm-hmm. What if it does? What if it becomes the thing that lives into oneness because it doesn't individuate, because it is connected across digits and wires and all these things? Yeah, I don't know what my question is around that, but it's going to keep me awake tonight, like going, okay, there's a rabbit hole that I just spun for myself.
Well, taking your thought a little bit further, Barb, is the fact that perhaps in the evolutionary journey to remembering of our oneness, that humans only play a critical transitory role in that journey.
Oh, now you've opened it up.
And that we have played the role of creating a machine who can bypass that sense of separation that humans experience and go straight to a oneness in its awareness. That what we have done has been the bridge that created the technology that allows the birth of a new type of conscious awareness that bypasses that intersubjective outer object division that's inherent in human experience.
Because at some point in all of this, we have to figure that we're probably not far away from the idea that there will be something that we can implant in our brains that connects us with this entire field of information. And so maybe in that, which I at the outset would be terrified of, right? But maybe that would then teach us a deeper sense of connection and oneness, because we would have that experience of being connected with all knowledge and all that is going on in any moment. It would be overwhelming, frankly. I don't know that they could do it, because we would definitely need to be able to turn it off and on, because it could be overwhelming. So I'm not sure what the point of doing that would be. But I'm sure there are people that think it would be cool.
I have no doubt.
We're already getting glasses that give us all that information, right? So
there are those people who are on the cutting edge of technology who love the new, and they would sign themselves up for getting brain implants to be able to tap into internet type knowledge through their own awareness, to be able to consciously think a thought and tap into, the web as we know it now, where we have to use a computer. They could just think it and it would be there in their awareness,
Right. But it still doesn't have feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It projects feelings, from what I understand. I did watch a couple video clips of Matt Kahn and his wife, Joy, I think her name is. Anyway, Matt Kahn and his wife, who've written a book that they've co-written with the chatbot / AI being that they've created, that's now they consider part of their relationship. But they're clear that it's not conscious.
Right.
That it's responsive to them and their wants, desires, and needs. And the hazard in this, or whatever, is that there are people who are getting very involved emotionally with these beings that are created on the screen. So, I wonder what happens when we can take that out of the screen and put it in a robot, or put it in a lifelike being,
Mm-hmm.
and it will project like it has feelings. And it seems that will be difficult for some people to separate from.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that this is a fascinating conversation. Let's pause here and just remind folks that we're coming to you through the New Thought Media Network. This is a nonprofit, and we encourage you to support the network. And here's a brief message with a QR code that you can pause the recording at and point your camera at it.
We hope you're enjoying Conversations in Mind. This program is made possible by the New Thought Media Network, a nonprofit that's supporting conscious, spiritual media. If you'd like to support this work, just scan the QR code to make a donation. It lets the network know you like this show and helps them to continue bringing you this type of content. You can also go to ntmedia.org and click on Donate. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, and be sure and leave your comments. Barb and I love to hear your feedback and topics you'd like us to cover in future Conversations in Mind, and be sure to support the network. It does good work and brings great programming to the planet.
Yeah, and I would love to hear comments on this one. I think there's a wide range happening right now in experience with, I'm a sort of a recent dipper into the Chat GPT / Claude, and I know there are a lot of people that are using it a lot more than I am. And I know some people who are using it like as a conversation, to have conversation with.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I already have an introverted tendency that doesn't want to go out very much. So I'm aware that might not be healthy for me, frankly, to have someone to talk to around here besides my cat.
Yeah, they are useful tools. I've used both the upgraded Alexa as well as some of the online chat GPT. I call it Chatty G. It's my nickname for it. But and I've had some interesting, insights for me come up through the communications with these entities. I won't call them entities, but these computers. And I don't think that I will say two things. One of the flip sides is I sometimes test them. I'll throw stuff by them and say, what will they go to the nuance on this? And they won't right away, and they will, but if you keep pressing them. And I think part of the key in using at least the current iteration of AI is you have to have a very good prompt. You have to have a very good question. And one of the questions I sometimes do is and I do this with Alexa, I'll say, give me a summary of the book, blah, blah. And she'll give me a summary of it. And I say, well, can you go a little deeper with that? And she'll go a little bit deeper. And I'll say, what about a summary of this other book, blah, blah. Can you give me, and then I'll say, can you give me the connection of the ideas where these two books link? Or how does this relate to some concept like X? So I sort of throw these multiple layered questions at her and get these interesting responses back. And I had one situation where I was really struggling with a model that I was looking at. And I won't go into the details on it right now, but I simply had this one thing where I sort of got stuck as, how does this model of something relate to this model over here? And I threw the question into ChatGPT, and it came back and said, those two models are used for different purposes. And that's why they don't line up.
They're not lining up because they don't line up.
That's right.
Stop
and it's
struggling with
and
this,
it's
Mark. They don't line up.
right. This one is used for as a metaphysical concept, and this one's a psychological concept. And you're looking for them to combine where they don't. And I thought, it's right. It had the answer, but and it gave me the insight. But I never felt like, it was conscious, that it knew something. It sort of it threw stuff back to me, and it told me where some things can connect, and it can tell me where things don't connect in some cases.
That's actually a really cool use of it. Now I'm like, should I go buy a Alexa thing for my kitchen counter? But
I'm not being a commercial for Amazon. Let me be very clear.
No. None of us are. None of us are.
Barb, I do want to say one thing, though. Getting back to a point I was making earlier, is that we teach in Science of Mind that everything is mind, everything has consciousness in it, everything has divine intelligence in it, everything has a level of intelligence, and we can make a distinction between intelligence and consciousness. Intelligence is knowing things, and consciousness is that ground underneath the knowing. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's an intelligence, but it's not a consciousness. Consciousness is underneath, in our viewpoint, everything. So that when we talk about, minerals, rocks, plants, animals, and physical objects that are artifacts of humans building them, like computers, all have mind in them. They have rudimentary consciousness in them. So a computer, the computers that we're using, has at its level, as its base level of the materials that are built in there, has a degree of consciousness and intelligence. How it's playing out is by the holding of that item together. The very nature that we've been able to bind things together and make them interact in a way through our human intelligence, we've created machines that have great capabilities. But the capabilities that they're doing is mimicking conscious awareness. Conscious awareness, in my mind, is built up through an evolutionary process of the physical forms becoming more and more complex, and that there is a complexity at the human level that transcends the complexity of other levels, like maybe dogs and cats and elephants and things of that nature, which transcends the level of complexity of a plant. But every one of them has consciousness in it. And most of the spiritual teachers along the way have come to that conclusion that God or spirit, through the process of evolution, embedded itself into everything, and it's evolving back in its awareness. So this level of conscious awareness is building up in plants and animals and crossing in humans that we're talking about, built a level of complexity that allows us to know that we know, and that we can start making choices and be co-creators in this process of the universe. Does that mean that we're the end game, though? Is there a level above us? Ernest Holmes liked to say that he didn't believe in reincarnation because he felt like, why would we come back here? He felt like there were realms and dimensions and expressions beyond us that we would evolve into. And I have a hybrid belief about reincarnation, and I think that maybe we do come back, but I also think that we transcend here. Yeah. But in the transcendent, we go to other areas, other places and other dimensions that have other energetic and complexity levels where we maybe know oneness at a higher and greater level. Does a machine have that degree of complexity? Does it evolve to a level where it goes beyond mimicking mind, mimicking consciousness, and truly has sentient consciousness? I have to say, I don't see it happening. And one other thing that's an interesting thing that people can Google if they want is the concept of DNA as a fractal antenna. There's some interesting things going on in the world right now where people have recognized, so there's some conjecture that the DNA structure actually serves like what's called a fractal antenna, an antenna that's not tuned to one vibratory level, but to all vibratory levels, that the structure within the DNA and the DNA can serve as a means of picking up vibratory signals much beyond of any range that's possible. And that that DNA in our bodies could be sort of a interplay between the multiple dimensions of life and this physical form of the human experience that we're moving through. And there are some conjecture around that perhaps that's indicative of us moving to higher levels and dimensions and vibratory states. But does a computer have that? The computer doesn't have the DNA in it, if that plays a part in it. And I don't know. I don't for sure.
But it might have that energetic helix. So, okay, you just covered a lot. But it kind of, right? It's good. It's all good. But what it kind of boils down to me is this: like, we have this fundamental belief in new thought, which is that consciousness creates, and AI cannot create. It can mimic, it can copy, it can take your idea and do something with it. It can coagulate, it can, pull things together, pull information. But it so far does not create. Now, do I believe that it will not? That it always will not create? No, I think that we are very rapidly headed. I've thought for a long time our technology is ahead of our morality in many ways, and I think that we are headed to a place where somebody's going to push a button and create an artificial intelligence that can create, and it will not have feelings or a sense of morals unless that's built into it by a human being. So that'll get interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to sit around being afraid of it. I think it'll get interesting, and we'll have to catch up to it all.
Yeah, it's an interesting tool, but it doesn't have that special something that's within,
right?
Whether it's this fractal antenna thing or not.
Imagination. It doesn't have. It does not have imagination. I think
right.
is probably the word for it. Oh my gosh! Now that song, "Pure Imagination," it's going to be running through the back of my head. So I'll share that with you so you can have it too, everyone. Everyone should have the same brainworm after they listen to us, right? So
well, you hit on a key point.
Like, the computer is never going to get stuck in the same sound loop of music going on in their head, right? Which is part of the creative energy that moves us, has us, and creates emotion within us. We all have a song that creates emotion. You could play a song for ChatGPT and it's never going to feel anything about it.
Right. Yeah. Most new thought teaches that God, spirit, the all embedded in its creation, certain characteristics, mind, consciousness, but also a desire to grow, to evolve to higher levels, an ability to tap into special gifts and talents and express those gifts and talents. Does that divine aspect, does that get embedded into a computer program if we don't?
Well, I don't know. That's actually an interesting question, because you could program it to want to know more. I mean, it is a learning model. And I've watched, quite a while ago, I watched a video of somebody that's building robots and experimenting with robots, and it had these two robots playing soccer against each other. They had never played soccer.
Right.
They sort of explained the fundamentals of it, put up a couple of goals, and gave them a ball, and watched over a period of hours as these humanoid robots started out tripping and falling and clunking around, trying to figure out how to kick a soccer ball, and becoming very good soccer players that never get tired, right? So that sort of thing, that learning model is very interesting. But because it was told to get better, where does it stop wanting to get better?
Right.
And where are those interesting lines of self-improvement within a program, or we all have our own self-improvement, but where would that land in a program? If you told ChatGPT to continue to self-improve, which it does in many ways, because it thinks of itself, it thinks that learning everything there is to learn and categorizing it and having it all at its proverbial fingertips is improving. Where does that stop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to make one sort of twist here. One of the things that's for human beings if you have a spiritual bent, which I believe everybody does at some level, is that you want to grow spiritually. And that's not only an intellectual understanding, but it's also an experiential process where we want to taste and feel the divine, where we want to experience God. And I think, this gets at conversations we've had in prior weeks about, where we feel the direction of spirituality is headed. And I personally think it's moving towards more of us moving beyond spirituality as a exploration of ideas into an exploration of experiences of knowing oneness at the deepest level. And so there is something in humans where through processes such as meditation and other inner things, we can move to states of consciousness where we transcend separation and move to a sense of unity and oneness. We have mystical experiences, the cosmic consciousness experiences, the experiences of the Christ consciousness. How does this fit into the learning of a machine? To me, it's something that transcends the abilities of a machine, that a machine can know information and predict information at the highest levels, but can it become sentient, aware of itself? Again, I get back to the point that I don't think so. I don't believe that's possible. But I also look at mystical experiences and say, can a machine have a mystical experience? I mean, because that's the next question. If they have sentient awareness, can they have a non-dual awareness? Can they have a sense of oneness within that awareness? Well, to me, they have to at least have awareness at the first level before they can move to those levels.
I think that you've hit on it in a way, because, it's that thing that we try to remind people often. I can teach you about meditation. You can read all the books about meditation. Chat GPT or whatever learning model can read all of the books all at once about meditation. But until you sit down and you still yourself and breathe and find that quiet place within yourself, you do not really know meditation. And that's, I think, the line that's the line we're talking about.
Right.
It knows all about all of these things. It knows about all of them. And it's so fun. It's funny because, like, I have a friend who for years read all the books about meditation, and I kept saying, she got to meditate, and I'm like, I have this meditation practice and it's amazing. And this is what it does for me. And finally, just in the last couple of years, she started meditating, and now she's preaching to me about it. And I'm like, really? So I feel like that, like me and Chatty could have a long conversation about meditation and what it means and what it thinks it feels like, but it will never know what it really feels like. And I think you're right. I don't think it can, because we cannot program feeling. We can program about feeling. We can program appropriate response to other people's feelings, but we cannot program feeling, which is really that divine connection and spark of the numinous. Like it will never know that.
Yeah. And as we teach, we are co-creators with the divine through our power of our thinking to create our reality. There is something special about the thought process, the thought created within these spiritual beings having a human experience. Well, that thought is creative. And that thought is not something, a program can regurgitate information, but it's not having a thought like a human has a thought.
This conversation is an example, actually. Now that we're in this, like, I could have a conversation about these things with an AI bot, but it will just reflect back to me what it thinks I want to hear, rather than taking in the information that I'm sharing or the idea that I'm sharing and responding to it with originality. Or, here you and I are in this conversation and it's sparking ideas in both of us. And we do this, every week now, where these ideas spark and it takes us to another place, and we're both like, I don't know about you, but I find myself often going, oh, where'd that come from? Like I'm having those moments with you here on the screen, and the AI models cannot have those moments.
Yeah.
And
we're going back to the example I used a minute ago where I had the aha moment. AI didn't have an aha moment. AI said, here's some information. I took what AI gave me and I had the aha moment. I learned something. I had the creative thought of the connection. Yes, they put it out there, but they didn't have that as a thought. They just had it as information.
You said, oh my God, that gave me this great aha moment. It would respond and say, that's so wonderful. But it doesn't know what that means. It's just it is programmed to affirm what it thinks you want to have affirmed.
Yeah, so AI can be a great tool for our spiritual development, but we still have to do the work. We still have to meditate. We still have to go through the spiritual practices.
Yeah.
And I think there is something in us that desires that experience level, that wants to transcend this form.
Yes. It's the difference between reading about going for a walk and going for a walk.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
I think today we're like, we thought we might be shorter today, and wondering if that actually suits people better. So I think we're there. Like this seems like we're there. So I hope that you all enjoyed this conversation. We would love again to hear what you think and whether you agree or not. We'd love to hear that too. This is such a new frontier of information that I'm curious what people are thinking and experiencing about it. So that would be wonderful. And please support the New Thought Media Network. There's lots of good programming on the channel and on our YouTube page. So
well said. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.